Welcome to Seymour from the Front Pew podcast, coming to you from the broadcast studio at Seymour First Baptist Church in Seymour, Tennessee, and featuring thoughts and discussions around loving God, loving others, making disciples, and living the life. I am your host, Tiger Brooks, and now on to the podcast. All right, welcome into Seymour from the Front Pew podcast. We have a very special guest in our midst today, and I'm thinking, Jason, this might be...
Hey, listen!
This might be the very first outside the church special guest that we have had on the podcast.
Live in the studio.
Live in the studio.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Soleil.
Yeah.
You are holding a very special place.
I am. I didn't realize.
In the history of the Seymour from the Front Pew podcast. So for everyone who may be watching and everyone obviously who is at least listening, this is Soleil Torry. And she is the COPE coordinator. We'll tell you about that in just a second. The COPE coordinator with Safe Harbor Children's Advocacy Center.
Yes.
Of the Smokies.
The Smokies. Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We are delighted that you took some time to come and be with us. So explain to everyone what the COPE coordinator is. Obviously, that is...
An acronym.
An acronym that stands for some things.
Yes. So the full version of that acronym is Community Outreach and Prevention Education Coordinator. Mm-hmm. So essentially, I go out into the community and I talk to people about child abuse and what it looks like to spot it, what it looks like when a child does tell you about abuse that's happening and how to go forward with that. I also do parenting classes for parents that are looking at parental termination. So it's part of their case, what their case manager has given them from TCS. And so that's an 8-week curriculum. And then I just kind of do any community events that are going on.
Yeah, very cool. And so you've been here a relatively short time in your new role here, yes. But loving it.
I love it. Yeah.
Very good.
So thankful.
How long?
I started right after New Year's, so almost 5 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So this is, for those that may not know, April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And that's obviously of particular note for us as a church. That's why that you see the two of us as church representatives here. I'm just here because I host this thing. I know how to push these buttons. But Jason is our family pastor and is sort of the person kind of responsible for making sure that our policies and procedures surrounding those kinds of issues are where they need to be. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and what that might look like. But just for the average person listening along or watching along, Soleil, would you kind of just share with us some of the numbers that tell us this is why we need to be aware of what's going on? And I think some of this might come as a shock to some of our listeners.
Yeah, so 1 in 4 girls are sexually abused or assaulted before they turn 18. I believe the statistic for boys is 1 in 10. And I think last year we had around 400 forensic interviews. So that means children that came in with a disclosure and talked to one of our forensic interviewers. So that's really 1 a day, and that's for 4 counties, mostly in Sevier County. And a lot of it still goes underreported. So that in itself is a really shocking statistic that there were over 365, almost 400.
Right.
Yeah, forensic interviews.
Well, I know that when we came to the pastor's breakfast that you all hosted and you all hit us with many of those numbers, I know that we had a little discussion even in the car leaving that day. 25%, which is in essence what you just described, 1 out of 4. 25% of girls report a sexual abuse situation, that they have been somehow sexually assaulted.
Yes.
And we thought, my goodness. I mean, when you think about the anywhere from 750 to 800 people that we have here on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And the number of girls in the room then it becomes, it really kind of hits home.
Yeah. Well, and to me, what hits home on that is that's reported.
Yeah.
Which means we have no idea how many are not being reported. So that's kind of the
and a majority of the time it is by someone that the child knows. So a family member, an uncle, a close friend, neighbor, that kind of a thing. So
So let's just jump into that then. And if that's the case, what are your recommendations both for the person who may come across this information who is being abused, and also for the person who may suspect that, that a friend or a family member, based on, changes in behaviors or things like that, they suspect that something's going on. What should a person do in those situations? Yeah.
So for a child who's being abused, but we go into the schools as well, and we kind of have different curriculum depending on the age that we go over. But the big focus is, who is your safe adult, and what does a safe adult mean? So the way that starts is, what are rules? Who gives you rules? Why do we have them? The answer is always to stay safe. What is safe? To not be hurt, to not be in danger. Would a safe adult ever ask you to break a rule that keeps you safe?
Yeah.
No. And so then we ask the kids, who are their safe adults? So for someone who, a child is hearing this, or a teenager, I would say go find your safe adult. Really break it down into layman's terms. Who is safe to you? Who has not asked you to break a rule that keeps you safe? And from there, they will make a mandated report and bring it in the authorities. And I would also say, if you are on the receiving end, be that safe adult. The way that you receive that information, don't act shocked. A lot of times they're kind of testing the waters to see if this is too heavy to share. And so just receive it like with a tender heart. And I'd also say, don't promise anything is a big one. And say, I'm going to do everything in my power to keep you safe and to make sure this gets taken care of. And from there, you would go on to call law enforcement to make a report.
So one of the questions then arises, there are organizations, institutions that are mandated reporting.
Yeah.
Talk through that. Who is and who is not, and what the differences are there.
Yeah. So a mandated reporter is really anyone that works with children. Technically, it's not everyone, but I would encourage, if you are an adult and you work with children, or really anyone tells you something, I would say you are a mandated reporter. That's not a technicality.
Yes.
But it really is anyone that works with children. It's going to be anyone in law enforcement, anyone in DCS, anyone in a government agency, even like teachers are mandated reporters who work at a daycare center, staff at the Boys and Girls Club, doctors. Those are going to be mandated reporters.
And so, and really the only difference is everyone should report something if someone's being hurt, obviously. Yes. But if you're a mandated reporter and you don't report it, there's legal ramifications.
There are legal ramifications for that, yes.
Yeah. And so I think that's important for us to for people to understand. It's always the right thing to do if anybody's being hurt, that you say something. Jason, from our standpoint on that side of things, talk a little bit about what that looks like to make sure that we catch those kinds of issues. Number one, starting from the way that we vet people who are in volunteer positions, all the way to what happens if that volunteer hears something or suspects something or what have you.
Right. Yeah. So, we do background checks, and for me, it's one of those things. I know it's important, and we do background checks, but I also come from a background that in my home church, we had an individual who was very involved working with kids, background checked, was a deacon in the body, and he was molesting girls, not in the church, but outside. And so that's the hard part is that background checks can only catch what has been caught.
Yeah.
it's important, and we do it because we want to catch those that are in that category. So it is something that we have to do. So yes, that is a first step, but we know that is not the only step. Part of it for us, that's part of why we have a policy that we tend to, number one, we only allow members to be primary teachers in the classrooms, because usually those members have been here for a period of time. We know them. We are familiar with them. Now, I know that doesn't always catch it either, so to speak, but there's only so much that we can do in some of that. And then beyond that, it is for us, at least in the body and in our programming and the things that we do, we have different policies in place that do not allow adults to be in proximity to children by themselves that would put them in situations, number one, put kids in situations that puts them at risk and or puts the adults at risk, so to speak. And so that's kind of where we try and catch the other side of that you just don't know. And, you know, I've been in ministry for 21 years now. And so I've seen a gamut of this from kids, students that have come to me and reported things, and then we've walked through those processes. And to be perfectly honest, I've been frustrated with the system, even in those instances of reporting, and doesn't mean that we still carry through and do what is required. But it's been difficult in some of those situations, even seeing that sometimes that system is not perfect, which is very hard in that reality. And then at that point, I think we just try and be the safe haven for those children and do the best we can to provide protection and an environment that allows them to feel loved and protected and safe. And but I've also seen it work, so I've seen that side of it. So it's definitely one of those things that's difficult on the front end. We do everything that we can. Knowing that there's holes in the net. And that's where the next step is for us, is that, you know, we tell our teachers, number one, if a teacher comes to me and has a concern, I always tell them that if you feel it's at this level because you're the one that's seeing what you're seeing, then my encouragement to you is you need to report if you think it's to that point. But even at that point, I'm going to investigate. I'm going to dig. I'm going to go and see, do I need to report? Do I need to get to that point? And we've gotten to that point at times. I don't want anybody to think this is like this is something that happens every week for us. It's not. It is for you guys.
Yeah.
But it's not something that happens every week for us. But when it does, we want to make sure that we are, number one, I try to get to the point where we go to the child and we try and have that conversation, or we're observing circumstances, observing their behavior a little bit differently to try and just be more intentional about what are their red flags. Are we seeing something that's going on there? And so those are some of those things that, you know, we'll have those conversations with teachers, you know, try and determine, is it a family member, or is it, you know, what is the circumstance that's coming at us, and how do we need to approach this the best way? And so those are things that we walk through. Yeah, those processes along the way.
So Soleil, when you're trying to educate, whether it's a church or other organization, about setting up policies and procedures, or being aware and being able to catch the things, what are some of the, kind of walk us through the framework that you kind of lay out for even an organization that says, hey, we're starting from ground zero. What do we need to do? So
from ground zero, you've done some of those things. So background checks are a big one, but again, it really only does so much. The next one I would say that is really big is we want accountability to keep the adult safe and keep the child safe. And so never even having spaces available for even a space like this, right? Like doors closed, no windows, no visibility at all. If the private conversation needs to be had, like still making sure that door is cracked or the window is open, or even if you're not visible, the child's visible, like through a window. is another really big one. I think even in classroom settings, right? Like teaching children what it looks like to, like, what are safe touches? Hey, you don't touch people there.
Yeah.
And if you're noticing things like that, that could be, kind of a red flag to look for. Yeah, I think ground zero, a big one, it just really is like, how do we keep accountability and visibility at the forefront and leave the space for those conversations with children? So yeah, just, you don't need to be digging, but just like leaving the room available for them to talk and asking intentional questions just about their lives and what is going on. What does a day in the life look like for you? What does going home look like? What's your mom and dad like? That kind of a thing. Just opening up that door for children to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize this too, even for us, that, sometimes in churches, there are those spaces and trying to find the privacy that is protected. That's the hard part, but we have, and I think our kids area especially, but even across our whole building is set up in a good way that, we've got cameras that are strategically placed. And usually, our kids' workers upstairs, they know that if I'm in certain places talking, it's private, that I'm having a private conversation with a child, but I'm in visible spaces, not just for the cameras, but also people that are constantly walking by and are within a decent proximity that they are seeing and able to know what's going on. On top of the fact that, all of our offices have windows. And so, yeah, those are things that sometimes a lot of people don't think about those things. They don't think, hey, I'm in this corner. I just need to talk to a child in a private setting. But there needs to be that accountability, like you said.
And even like outside of your children's spaces, like main areas, hallways, some people have talked about their experience with abuse in churches, or I guess anywhere, but specifically churches have talked about how they've been pulled into like different closets or different storage areas. And so what is the accessibility to that with adults and children? Like, can that happen? And so it really is just doing random checks. Like sometimes, I know that might sound strange, but just kind of checking areas when you think it might be an odd time or during services or in between times. Again, for that extra layer of accountability and visibility.
Yeah. And I think, there are times when I think a good practice for churches, especially, let's just kind of keep it in this realm because that's where we're operating, is, for those during Sunday morning events, keeping the closets, the janitorial places, and all those kind of things locked.
Absolutely.
Making sure that those are inaccessible and not opportunities for the kind of thing that you're talking about. And a lot of people, the thing that happens the most, and I know that I have experienced this. I started serving in a pastoral sense the church that I grew up in, right? And so a lot of those situations in smaller churches, it's more of we're just family here, right? And the excuse for not doing some of these things is that would never happen here. How many times have we ever heard that would never happen here? Yeah. Well, as I was trying to implement policies and procedures for this kind of thing where none existed before, you get pushback. It's incumbent upon those of us who are on staff and those who are in charge and have to make these decisions to be able to articulate, even in those situations, we come across as being suspect. How dare you believe that any of us could harm a child? People become very defensive, and I think my word for that is just you've got to hold your ground and be able to overcome that kind of thing. Have you come across that in your efforts?
In the spaces that I've done trainings, I haven't received that pushback, but growing up in the church as well, and just speaking with different people I know who are in various churches, I've heard that there is that pushback. The church I grew up in, I did serve in the nursery. I was a small group leader. I was all the things. And even before I had this job, that is something I took from them. They did a really great job, like when I served in the nursery, I started doing that at 13, right? Like I was never allowed to go into the bathroom with children because I was underage. And that was just a safety for me as an also child. But the men were never allowed to change diapers. The men who were volunteers were never allowed to go in the bathroom. When people did take kids to the bathroom, door had to be open, right? And even as a small group leader for teens later in life, they did have those trainings for us of how to talk with children if there was disclosures. I did have children disclose, some of my teens did disclose things to me, and I did have to report. And so I think even on that end, like as a small group leader, as a volunteer, having the resources and the training on how to receive that, because it's heavy too. So I think it's a kindness on how to how do you receive that and like not take it home and like care, like all those things. How do you hold the balance is also really important just for the care of the people in the church. It's part of the health of a church.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, and you can jump in on this part of it too, is just when you begin to have these conversations and you begin to take inventory of all of the possibilities that need to be addressed, you know, in the environments and all the things that we're talking about. You know, one of the things that I faced I started out at children and youth, and in that church where I was born and raised, and, you know, I came to ministry a little bit later in life than a lot of people. So sometimes the kids were my friends' kids. and so it's always, hey, would you just bring so-and-so home after this event's over? And it would just be me and somebody's daughter. Yeah. And, you know, outside of the position that I now hold, that would be a normal thing. It's no big deal, you know. But we're in a situation where that can't happen anymore, you know. And there's always, hey, it's just so-and-so. It's just these people that you've grown up with. And you know, people even watching this might think, well, that's no big deal. You know, that happens all the time. 2026, it can't happen anymore, unfortunately. Yeah. You faced that, I know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes, from the standpoint of you know, taking folks home or taking students or kids home. You know, I've always, I mean, for me, again, my background shapes a lot of a lot of my perspective in the way that I've tried to put things and boundaries in place, and in my ministry in particularly, and then the way I build that out in the whole ministry. But there was an individual before me at my previous church that was falsely accused, and they walked through a process. Law enforcement walked through a process, and eventually it came out that it was false. That it was not a proper accusation. They were just mad at this individual. And that has also shaped my mindset that I'm never going to put myself at any cost in a position like that I can be accused falsely. Now, that doesn't mean that can't still happen. It can still happen. But usually if I've done everything that I can back up, and I can make sure that it's known I did not put myself in that situation. You know, so all of my youth leaders, you know, and kids workers, they've always known, hey, if there is one kid left, you don't leave me.
Right.
You stay with me.
Have multiple people there.
You know, there is always going to be another adult present as long as there is one student still available on property and their parents are taking longer to get there. And so those are things that we've put in place as well, and that we make sure we do as much as we can. Again, it is incredibly hard. I mean, even for me, you know, you want to be that safe space, and sometimes you can speak into this a little bit more, but sometimes I've found a lot of those kids are also the more. I want to be careful how we word some of this. They're the more touchy-feely kids because they've been exposed to things that they shouldn't have been exposed to at such a young age, and because of that, they're not necessarily. They don't think much about it. They know that I'm a safe space, and they come and they want to hug. They want to embrace and have that because, you know, you've got to be careful even with that. And so I try to be very careful. I've always, you know, no front hugs. There's the side hugs. Yeah. You know, and if a kid's coming, it's And I don't, I try to do it in such a way that the kid doesn't think that I'm trying to be distant from them, but I also want them to know and understand just from the peripheral kind of this boundary that's there, because I want them to see someone who loves them, cares for them, a proper boundary of this is the way I can love you and I do love you. And if I cross this boundary, that can be unloving. That cannot be a safe thing. And so I want them to see that without having to get down with a 6-year-old and have that conversation per se. It's the way we portray that. And we try and make sure that our teachers and our leaders know that as well, that, hey, show love, compassion, be a person that can have the physical contact that's appropriate physical contact for that environment, for that relationship, so to speak. And so those are the things that for me, a lot of people don't think twice about some of those contacts that you're going to have, the car rides that you're going to take someone, what that looks like. You do have to be so careful in the way that comes across.
Yeah.
And it is part of that kind of expansive policies and procedures, the things that people don't really think about. That would be part of the way you train your teachers and your youth leaders of like, here's where appropriate and safe just for you are. And if you are alone with the student, you're not alone with the student. You need to call someone and have them be in the room with you. Even just little things that you really wouldn't think of. That's part of that. Like what happens with phones. And if you see something on a student's phone that you shouldn't see, right? Like what does that conversation look like with the student, with the youth leader and calling someone, like all of those things that are going to be really also dependent on the age and who is working there. Yeah.
Yeah. We keep talking about safe space too. And one thing that I would just kind of point out that I've seen over the years that, we'll have circumstances that will happen at church. Usually those come because a teacher or a leader or an adult has witnessed or been visible to something or has had a concern. And occasionally it'll be a kid that will express something where we most of the time see the students and or kids just really open up is at camp. And I think because of I've always wondered, why is it that we get to camp and this just, it's like the
walls
floodgates
come down. And,
and I think, over the years I've thought there's, number one, at church, yes, it can be a safe space, but if it is a loved one, if it is a parent or an aunt or an uncle that is present at church, there's at least that thought in the back of that child's mind that, hey, my abuser is here, is in the building. Where we go to camp and we're hours away from that individual, and they do feel almost this complete sense of safety that I am in this bubble and everyone around me in this circumstance, in this environment is here to protect me, and they're open and they're hearing it even from camp standpoint, things that are going on and taking place, being talked about. And I mean, almost every year, not from our group, but every year when we are at camp, I'm hearing either there's a student somewhere on that camp in other church groups that are opening up, that there's almost every year there's students and kids that are saying, hey, this is taking place. And the camps that we go to are really, really good. They've done a really good job of doing the training. So all of our leaders that go to camp have to watch a child abuse kind of almost this little curriculum thing. It's like a video driven thing that takes 30 minutes or something that teaches you how to spot it. I say teaches you as best it can in a 30-minute little video, but also, what is the report? What is the appropriate things that I should be doing? And then even when we get to camp, they say, and they are mandatory reporters and they come directly to us, but they also are making the appropriate conversations with authorities as well. And so that's the interesting thing, I think, about that safe space that, we can be a safe space here, but sometimes we see these camps and these off-campus stuff become really safe spaces.
And I would also say another reason for that would be for a lot of children who grew up being sexually abused, it's their normal.
Yeah.
They don't realize that it's like in their mind, how everyone was raised, right?
Yep.
This is how everyone's life is at home. And so then they get to camp and they're realizing, oh, that doesn't happen for people at home. That's interesting. Wait, so when the XYZ happens, like what happens for you? You know, those are the conversations that happen. And I have also seen, camp is definitely one of those spaces where children tend to disclose more.
Yep.
Because they're removed, but then also they're having more in-depth conversations about at-home life and what their friends' parents are like and uncles and all the things, and are realizing like, oh, that's not how it is for me.
Mm-hmm. So what would it look like, you know, in terms of somebody being motivated because of its, you know, Awareness Month, and they're like, we need to really up the ante with what we're doing at church or this organization or that organization. How can Safe Harbor and how can you come around them and offer resources and education relative to putting together those kinds of things?
Yeah. So I offer, I know it sounds lengthy, but a 2.5-hour training, and it is video driven, but also has a lot of discussion. It is evidence-based. So, that essentially means that people have seen results come out of this training. Mm-hmm. And I can split it up into 2 parts. If you wanted to do it as a church, I could offer it to the whole church body. If there's really just even a small group, like who are parents that want to do it, I know we're at a church, but even if you're a parent and you have kids and are around your kids' friends and you're just around kids, your life is kids, I would always recommend, like, it's always good to be more informed than not. And so that is completely free of charge. I come to wherever you guys are. And it's a 2.5-hour training where we just also get to talk and use kind of real life examples too. Of like, if this happened, kind of how would you respond? What would that look like for you?
Very cool. Well, I think unless there's any other things on your heart that you want to share with us.
Lastly, it is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and so I don't know if you guys are doing a Blue Sunday, but blue is the color for Child Abuse Prevention Month, and so really any way that you want to connect with Safe Harbor, put pinwheels in your yard, do kind of a yard sign, a poster, just make it available to your congregation to talk about it. I think a lot of times too, I've realized it's a lot of times adults will disclose to me after the fact. So almost every time I've done a training, an adult will come up to me after and be like, that was me as a kid and I never said anything. Yeah. And so I'm really, thankful that you're coming around and teaching people. But a lot of times you'll meet people who have never disclosed or have never said something before. And so even though those numbers are unreported, it is so relevant today. Yeah.
I would also just say we don't know how many people listen to this, but, for those who are hearing mandatory report and this kind of stuff, what does it look like to report?
Yeah. So it's really simple. I don't have the actual link pulled up, but you just go to the DCS website and there's a part that says make a report, and you'll make a report, or you can call the phone number and they'll ask you questions about what's the name, do you know where they live, what is flagging, why are you making a report, what are those things? And they'll also try to get a sense if the child is in immediate danger, if they're going back to the address and they live with the person who you think is abusing them. So those are kind of the questions they'll ask, or what you'll fill out online on the report.
I'll tell you what we'll do is I'll get you with Shelby after we wrap up, and make sure that we have that linked, and we will link it in the data for this podcast, so that people can have that right in front of them for that kind of thing. And we'll also put a link to Safe Harbor on there as well. And we just appreciate you coming in and talking about this. We felt like this is sort of a departure for us to have different guests come in. Probably not going to be the last time, because I think it's important to do that, especially with just community partners. Kind of we're all in this to support our community in a real positive way. And so appreciate you taking the time again to come in, and we'll link all your data so that people can find out more about who you are and who Safe Harbor is.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here, so thank you.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank
All right. We thank you for listening to Seymour from the Front Pew podcast. As always, you can use the email that you're about to hear and get back to us with ideas or questions that you would like for us to address or topics you want us to talk about. We would love to do that. So thanks for listening.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to Seymour from the Front Pew. Our sole desire for this podcast is to glorify God by educating and encouraging His body. If you would like to learn more about anything you've heard today, feel free to reach out by email at staff@seymourfbc.org or by visiting our website at seymourfbc.org. If you're located near our community and do not have a church home, come worship with us at 10:15 a.m. on Sunday morning. Until then, we pray God's richest blessings on you and yours as you love God, love others, make disciples, and live the life.